Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today, we got another episode of reviewing NHL teams offseason so far. As today, we got the Vancouver Canucks ahead of us as we're going to be taking a look at their pretty crazy offseason, to say the least. There was a lot of dumb moves, like picking up Larson, but then there was, in that trade as well, they got Garland, who I think will be amazing. Did they pay a little bit too much for Pearson? Did they get the right backup goalie? So before we get into all that, I'd like to just say, if you are new to the channel, make sure to slap that subscribe button and hit that like button as well. That'll be very much appreciated. And if you haven't already, make sure to go check out my Discord server. The link will be down in the description below. So let's get into this puppy here with the Vancouver Canucks. And now, I'm not really a big fan of what the Vancouver Canucks did. Of course, they did get Pearson and Quinn Hughes back on contracts, which I gotta say, I quite like them. Quinn Hughes, phenomenal defenseman. Sure, he's not there defensively yet, but his offensive game is absolutely amazing. Sure, is it a bit of a steep contract, but I mean, man, you got the guy for the next 6 years, so maybe this is a good contract for the next few. It's not too bad. Maybe a little bit of an overpayment, but for a guy who is as phenomenal as Quinn Hughes, who puts up the offensive numbers that he does, that's absolutely amazing. And then Pearson, that's well-deserved. You don't even really need to talk about Pearson. 3 years at 7.35. After the 3 years might hurt. I think that's going to be, the biggest hindrance against this contract. At least it's still in the RFA years. But I feel like this contract's going to hurt them big time just because they're going to have to pay him big bucks. But at least it ends when Tyler Myers' contract ends. So then you get that $6 million back to be able to put into Pettersson's contract, so that is going to be pretty huge. So it was good signings by Jim Benning. You sign all the contracts long enough so you don't have to sign them, 2 years from now and have to deal with a still very, cap hit, kind of struggling team where you can't really do a whole lot, especially with Tyler Myers' contract, and then, involve another few players like Ekman-Larsson, who I think might be a hindrance to their cap hit as well. I don't know how well he'll play, but we're going to be getting into that. We got a whole lot that we got to talk about here with the Vancouver Canucks. So let's just jump right into it with the trades that they made. So first up, right off the get-go, they picked up Jason Dickinson for a third-round pick. I actually quite like this move here by the Vancouver Canucks. Jason Dickinson is going to be their third-line centerman most likely this year. Plays a really good defensive game. They locked him up on a deal, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But he plays a really good defensive game. Sure, he's not going to put up a big amount of offense. He's going to probably throw you up 20, maybe 25 points a season for your team. He's not going to be a big point producer, but the biggest thing with Jason Dickinson is he's going to give you some good defensive numbers. He's going to play a great third-line centerman. He could play a little bit of PK for you. I think Jason Dickinson's a great pickup here for the Vancouver Canucks, and only having to give up a third-round pick for his signing rights is not too bad, especially since he was an RFA as well. So not a bad move there to start everything off, and then we get into this trade. And this trade is filled with tons of debate. Because of the fact that the Canucks got Ekman-Larsson and Garland, which I love the Garland piece of this trade. Absolutely love this guy. I'm not a big fan of Ekman-Larsson. Now, what did they trade away? They traded away Roussel, Beagle, and Louis Eriksson, which were all horrible contracts on the Vancouver Canucks, but only had 1 year left. And why am I saying that? Well, Ekman-Larsson has 6 years left at $7.260 million. Yes, they do save a little bit of money this year, but now they have to worry about Ekman-Larsson. If he doesn't turn out to be a very good defenseman for these next couple seasons, then it's just going to be another dead cap player like how Louis Eriksson was, and they have to pay him for the next 6 years. They also traded away a first-round pick in the top 10, which ended up being Dylan Guenther, which is a big loss no matter which way you look at it, and then a second-round pick and a seventh-round pick as well. So the reason why I'm not a big fan of Ekman-Larsson, I'm going to show you the reason why, and I'd like to just say, make sure to go check out my boy Jfresh. His link will be down in the description below, as I'm using some of his, one of his cards from his analytics, and he has some great analytics, so if you want to, make sure to go check him out. But here they are, Ekman-Larsson's analytics, and this is why I'm not that big of a fan of Ekman-Larsson. And I mean, you could just watch the guy. I mean, I was an Edmonton Oilers fan, and Watching the Arizona Coyotes every single time, Oliver Ekman-Larsson looked like a bombshell out there. He hasn't been himself over the past few years, and you can see that in his game. The past few years, he has not been a very good defenseman. And even if he does get back up to being a very good defenseman, will he be able to play defense? He was mostly reliant on that offensive game, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. But when you already have Quinn Hughes, what's the point of picking up Oliver Ekman-Larsson? That's really what's going through my head. What was the point of picking up Larson when you already had a player like Quinn Hughes, and now you pick up another defensive liability to your team? I just don't think that was a very smart bet by the Vancouver Canucks, especially since all these bad contracts were ending in a year. What's the point of just waiting a year to let all these bad contracts end and then do whatever the heck you want to do instead of picking up Oliver Ekman-Larsson for the next 6 years on a bombshell of a contract, right? That's my opinion. And especially since you have to deal with a no movement clause, you're stuck with the guy for the next 5 years. And this guy is definitely buyout proof, without a doubt. The way that his contract is built, it's definitely buyout proof, and you're definitely not going to be able to buy out this contract, and you're going to be stuck with him for the next 6 years. So have fun, Vancouver Canucks fans. And I know you might say, oh, Oliver Ekman-Larsson will jump back up, but I don't know, man. The way that he was looking conditioning-wise, he looks slow, and especially for a defenseman like Oliver Ekman-Larsson who uses his speed, and if he's not conditioned well enough to go into this upcoming season, I don't know, man. I just don't have enough belief in Oliver Ekman-Larsson to bounce back this year like other defensemen like Seth Jones. I could see Seth Jones bouncing right back up and maybe potentially being good, but there's a very slight little chance that he doesn't. Same with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I feel like there's a slight little chance that he bounces back up, but if he doesn't, well, man, it's going to be burning the Canucks without a doubt. And then they also traded away Nate Schmidt. Nate Schmidt just wasn't fit in there in Vancouver. Would have been a better defenseman than Oliver Ekman-Larsson, in my opinion, but now he gets dumped off to Winnipeg for a third-round pick. It was practically just a salary cap dump since they were picking up Larson. I did like the Connor Garland trade in this one, though, but, in retrospective, would you be willing to trade this amount for Connor Garland? I don't know, especially a top 10 pick that could have been Dylan Guenther. Which, yes, Connor Garland's amazing. He is absolutely amazing as a player. I love Connor Garland. But when you have Dylan Guenther as a prospect, he would have been absolutely amazing for the Vancouver Canucks. And I know that they're in win-now mode, basically. That's what the Canucks are in. But they should have taken more time to rebuild. And that's my honest opinion. That last playoff run was a miracle that they went on. It was. This past season was a kind of a wake-up moment that, hey, you are still needing to be, play patient, rebuild this team a little bit, retool it. You still got time. You still got your young players. But, they wanted to rush right into it. And, so their draft was all right. They didn't really get a whole lot of big pieces to their team for the Vancouver Canucks. Not that I know a lot of these guys. Kaluminovich from Belarus here was one of their picks. 52 points in 37 games. Not bad there in that Belarus league. And he also did good for the World Juniors as well, 6 goals in 5 games, so a little bit of a goal scorer here in him. We'll have to see how well he turns out, but not a bad draft for the Vancouver Canucks. And then we'll move on towards their free agency, which they did a lot. The only players that they did lose this year was Alexander Edler, and they bought out Brain Holtby, and I think that's really all they lost. They didn't really lose too much to the expansion draft either, I don't think, so they really didn't have to worry about very much of that. So we'll start off with Tanner Pearson. Tanner Pearson signed a 3-year, $3.25 million deal, and this was kind of like a move where it felt like, they were worried about losing another player, especially since they lost Tyler Toffoli last year. But the thing is with Tyler Toffoli is 10 times better than what Tanner Pearson is. And Tanner Pearson is all right, but he's all right. He's definitely not great offensively. He's definitely not that great defensively. And you can just take a look at this past year. Why lock up a guy that was not playing that good for your team when you could have went and upgraded with some other players, I just don't think it was a very smart signing here by the Vancouver Canucks. He was all right. He doesn't bring very good defensive numbers to the team. He's not that fantastic offensively. We'll have to see how well he does in this upcoming season, but I just don't like the signing. They should have just let him go and went after some other winger. And then Connor Garland signed a 5-year, $4.95 million deal, which I think this one was an absolute steal for Connor Garland. Absolutely amazing player. He's going to throw up, 20, 30 goals a season, play really good defensively. He's just going to be a really useful player for the next 5 years, and especially at this contract here, that's going to be a steal for the next 5 years. He's going to love playing in Vancouver, I feel. He's going to be a real big, fan favorite, I feel, as well, just because of the way that he plays. He's a real pesky player. He does everything you need him to be, whether it's defense, physicality, scoring goals, whatever it need be. Connor Garland can do that. I think it's an amazing contract for the next 5 years. Getting him locked up was real smart. And then, of course, a ton of depth signings with Patan. Luke Shen also signed a 2-year deal there. And then Brandon Sutter signed back for a 1-year, 1.125. He'll most likely be a depth player. Plays good at center. Brings good defensive numbers. Nothing else that's really special about Brandon Sutter. Yaroslav Halak, I'm not a big fan of this one. To back up Demko, I feel like this was... I'm not a big fan of it for the reason why that, it's definitely an upgrade from Halpy, but it might not be because Halak's game has been declining over the past couple years. He took a real big drop in this past season, a 905 from a 919. He is slowly starting to decline with his age, and that's with most goalies. He's up there at 36, and I don't think he has very much of a game left to go in him. So we'll have to see how well he does this year, but a $1.5 million deal for 1 year is a very low-risk deal if he doesn't turn out to be very good. But you don't want to be so reliant on Thatcher Demko, Like, Thatcher Demko is an amazing goalie, without a doubt. Thatcher Demko is amazing, but can he continue to do that? This is going to be his first year where he's probably going to be playing, 60-70% of the games this upcoming season, and will he be able to handle that will be the biggest question coming into this upcoming season. I do believe that Demko will be able to handle that, but when you're going into your first full season as a starting goalie and you really don't have a backup goalie to rely on, you might have something happen like with Cam Talbot with the Edmonton Oilers where, he played 70 games that year and then the next year he was half of himself because he was still having to play most of the games because we don't have a backup goalie. And that's the biggest thing. You want to have a good backup goalie to assist your starting goalie, especially when you have a young goalie like Thatcher Demko, so you're not riding him 24/7. So hopefully, Yaroslav Halak can be that backup goalie that, the Canucks need him to be, but not a terrible signing, especially at a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. Next one, we got Tucker Poolman. I thought this deal was absolutely stupid. 4 years at 2.5 for Mr. Tucker Poolman. This guy is a defensive liability. I remember watching him in Winnipeg, and the only thing he did was play physical. He was a defensive liability, can't play offense. I thought, 2.5, sure, but why for 4 years for a defensive liability defenseman when you already got Tyler Myers who can't play defense? Now you also picked up Larson who can't play defense. Hamonic as well can't play defense, and they just re-signed him. And Quinn Hughes can't play defense. Like, I'm excited to watch this defensive core just get ripped apart every single damn night because all of them are defensive liabilities. If you watch them, Tyler Myers was a huge defensive liability all season last year. Quinn Hughes was, sometimes he played all right defensively, but most of the time he was a defensive liability out there. Same with Larson and same with Tucker Poolman. And then, they signed Travis Hamonic back to a 2-year, $3 million deal. He's been having some problems, but I think he's all ready to go for this upcoming season. But once again, Travis Hamonic has not been very good over these past 2 years, especially had a really rough year last year, and you could say that, the team was bad, but the team wasn't very good defensively no matter which way you look at it, and now they're the same defensively as what they were last year. I just don't have very much belief in their defensive core, and especially with, picking up Hamonic again, and I mean, there wasn't a lot of defensemen out there, and I understand that, but like, doing this is just, it's not smart. It really isn't. And then Levy signed to a 1-year deal, not bad. Dickinson's deal, I thought was really good. He's a good defensive player. Good 3-year, $2.65 million deal. And then, of course, the Pearson and Hughes contracts, which we already kind of talked about and how I kind of liked them. Pearson, of course, you might have to deal with paying him, big money after the 3 years, but he's going to deserve it anyways. And Quinn Hughes, nice 6 years. At least you separated the two of them, so you're not having to pay both of them big contracts on the same day. So that is quite nice there by Jim Benning. Nice contracts too. I think it was at nice AAV. So lots to talk about there with the Vancouver Canucks. Lots to go over there. This team it was an all right off season, but like this team has a lot of questions. I don't think it's a guaranteed spot that they're going to be taken third overall. Their defense is going to be a big question. How well will their defense play coming into this upcoming season, right? Tucker Poolman, that's going to be rough if he's playing in the top four. I just think that, the defense is going to be the biggest concern for Vancouver Canucks fans, and it has to be. This defense does not look good. It really does not. You look at the numbers for every single one of these defense. You look at the game tape of every one of these defense from last year, and they were just defensive liabilities. They did not play very good. So I think that's the biggest concern, stepping into this upcoming season. Now, yes, their offense is amazing. They got Garland, Horvat, Besser, Peterson, Miller, Pearson's, of course, is up there. I think it's a really good top six. Then your bottom nine with Hoglander, Dickinson, and if Podkolzin can really pop off this upcoming season, then you have a really good, forward core. It's just their defensive core is the biggest concern I think that Vancouver Canucks fans should have. I think this should be a fine regular season team. But once they get into the playoffs, and if they do, I think their defense is going to be what, shoots them in the foot. Because if you're going to be relying all on Thatcher Demko, that's not a very smart game plan, especially for a young guy like him. And for a backup that, had a pretty down season last year, who was getting tossed out by Swayman and Vlador, and also dealt with some injuries, I don't know. It's a very big risk here with the Vancouver Canucks, and honestly, I think for this offseason, the only move that I really liked was the Connor Garland. I liked him in the deal. That I thought was a really good pickup for them. The Larson, I felt like that whole trade was just a bombshell. It shouldn't have been made. If you were making a trade, you should have just went after Garland. Otherwise, Pearson was a good deal. Quinn Hughes was a good signing. Jason Dickinson was a good trade. I'm going to go with a C+. I'm going to go with the C+ for the Vancouver Canucks. Actually, no. I'm just going to go with a straight C. I'm just going to go with the straight C because I don't like a lot of the moves that they did. There was some moves that I did like, but, the Larson move I felt was, a big hit to their offseason. I don't think he's going to be able to bounce back. I do believe that, and if, I get proven wrong, I get proven wrong, right? But their off-season was, it's all right. It's all right, to be honest with you. But for right now, guys, I'm going to end the video here, guys. Tell me, guys, in the comment section below what you guys thought of the Vancouver Canucks offseason. And I'll see you guys all in the next one. Adios, amigos.